Welcome to Momentum Mind, the place where we unlock the secrets of your mind, break through limits, and turn ideas into unstoppable momentum. Today, we're diving into a story that will challenge the way you think about success, failure, and the voice inside your head that could be holding you back. Stay with me, because this could change the way you see your own journey. Chapter 1: The Quiet Gate. The wind carried a soft whisper as it slid between the white stone pillars of the quiet gate, a place travelers reached when their old selves could no longer carry them forward. People said the gate had stood there longer than any memory, yet it always looked freshly carved, its surface smooth, almost warm. What lay beyond it was never fully clear. Some said it led to a grand city of new beginnings. Others believed it opened into a wilderness where the brave went to shed the weight of their own pride. But the truth, as always, waited for those who stepped through. A young wanderer approached the gate just as the sun dipped low, turning the path behind him gold. His clothes were dusty from long roads, and his boots carried the imprint of many places where he had paused, questioned himself, argued with strangers, tried to prove something, and walked away feeling strangely hollow. His name was Elias, though few people remembered it. That was partly because he changed towns often and partly because he spent most of his time trying to be seen rather than understood. Elias rested a hand on one of the pillars. It hummed under his touch, like a heartbeat. A small shiver ran up his arm. He pulled his hand back and frowned. No one told him the gate would feel alive. Behind him, an old traveler approached with slow strides. Her cloak was patched with pieces of fabric from far-off lands, and silver thread sparkled faintly between the seams. She carried no weapon, no map, not even a walking stick. Her silence felt purposeful, like a lesson wrapped in stillness. "Are you entering the quiet gate?" she asked in a soft, steady voice. "I think so," Elias replied, though uncertainty clung to him like dust. "I heard that beyond it lies the place where one becomes something greater." The old traveler smiled, not kindly, not unkindly, but as if she had heard this answer countless times. "Many come here wanting to be greater," she said. "But few understand what must be left behind." Elias straightened his back. "I've trained, studied, fought, pushed myself. I've earned this." Her smile didn't fade. "You carry a heavy noise around your heart." He scowled slightly. "Noise?" "Thoughts that insist you are already at the center of every story. Feelings that flare whenever you are not praised. Fears that whisper you will disappear if you are not admired." Her eyes rested on him with a calm that felt strangely sharp. "That noise is loud. It will echo even louder beyond the gate." Elias opened his mouth to argue, but the old traveler lifted a hand gently. Her fingers were thin and wrinkled like folded parchment, yet something in their stillness made words fall flat in his throat. "Do you know why people truly walk through?" she asked. Elias didn't answer. "They walk through because they want to be free," she continued. "But freedom does not come from being adored or feared or remembered. It comes from letting go of the need to be all of those things." Elias felt heat rising in his chest, the kind that comes when someone touches a truth you didn't want uncovered. He crossed his arms. "I'm not like that," he said, though part of him knew he was exactly like that. "And yet," she said softly, "you came here." The wind shifted, stirring dust around their feet. The humming from the pillar grew stronger, as if responding to the tension between them. Elias looked at the glowing gateway. "What's on the other side?" "A path," the woman said. "One that tests not your strength or your skill, but your willingness to be small when you want to be grand. To learn when you want to command. To listen when you want to shout. To serve when you want to shine." He frowned. "That sounds like defeat." "It is the opposite," she said. "The loudest enemy lives inside. If you silence it, no outside force can overwhelm you." The thought shook him more than he wanted to admit. He tried to picture the life he left behind, moments where he could have learned but instead argued, times he pushed ahead when he should have waited, tasks he refused because they felt beneath him, dreams he talked about endlessly yet worked on only when someone was watching. It all formed a heavy shape inside him, one he wasn't ready to examine. The old traveler watched the conflict flicker across his face. "The gate does not force anyone," she said. "It opens only to those who walk through with honest steps." Elias hesitated. What if I'm not ready? No one ever is, she replied. But you can begin anyway. He took a slow breath. The humming softened, as though the gate sensed his uncertainty. What was it like for you? He asked. The old woman looked toward the horizon, her eyes reflecting memories he could not see. I thought the world owed me applause, she said. I believed my talent was a crown, and I demanded others bow to it. But the gate showed me how fragile I was. How easily shaken. How hungry for approval. And once I faced that truth, the world grew larger. Friendlier. Quieter. I could finally hear myself. Elias imagined stepping through, losing everything he thought made him important. A strange fear gripped him, but beneath it, a whisper of excitement, like the first moment before a storm cleans the sky. He looked again at the glowing threshold. The light was neither bright nor dim. It was inviting, but not comforting. It promised transformation, not ease. Will I come out the same? He asked. No one who enters truly does, she said. His heart beat faster. He tightened his grip on the strap of his travel bag, though he sensed the gate cared nothing for his possessions. I don't know if I can face what's in there, he admitted quietly. She stepped beside him, placing a hand on the stone pillar. That is why you must go, she whispered. Elias closed his eyes, feeling the wind against his face. The air beyond the gate carried a different scent, like rain before it falls, like pages that have not yet been written. He took one step toward the light, then another. Just as he reached the edge of the threshold, the humming deepened into a low, resonant sound, as though something on the other side had awakened and noticed him. The old woman's voice reached him one last time. Remember, she said, the enemy inside you will follow. You cannot leave it behind. You can only learn to quiet it. Elias swallowed hard, and as he crossed the final inch, the light shifted, like a curtain being pulled aside, and something unexpected moved in the shadows beyond, waiting for him, waiting as if it knew his name. Chapter 2: The Hall of Echoes. The moment Elias crossed the threshold, the world shifted around him like a dream folding inward. The warm light dissolved into a soft, dim glow that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. His feet touched a smooth stone floor, cool like river water at dawn. The air tasted faintly of metal, as if the place held memories of old battles no one spoke of. He stepped forward cautiously. The path stretched ahead, narrow at first, then widening into a long corridor lined with towering archways. Each arch curled upward like a question mark carved from shadow. The space felt enormous, yet silent in a way that pressed against his ears. Even his breathing sounded too loud. As he moved deeper inside, his footsteps echoed, not just behind him but beside him, above him, around him. The echoes were strange, not quite matching the rhythm of his steps. Some came a little early. Some lingered long after he stopped walking. Some sounded sharper, as if carried by a version of him that walked with more confidence, or more arrogance. He paused, listening. The echoes continued. Elias spun around. Hello, he called. The sound bounced back, only it wasn't his voice returning. It was something close to it, but fuller, stronger, as if a proud version of himself were mocking him gently from behind one of the arches. The corridor darkened slightly. Elias swallowed and took another step. As he walked, he noticed outlines forming within the arches. Shapes. Silhouettes. At first they looked like shadows moving behind curtains. But soon they sharpened into clearer forms, people he recognized from distant memories. A teacher who once praised his talent and made him believe he was destined for greatness. A rival he had argued with until his voice cracked. A friend he had lost after insisting on always being right. Each figure stood motionless, carved from faint light. Their faces were soft, blurred, like fogged glass. Yet something about their posture, the tilt of a head, the lift of a chin, the crossed arms, told him exactly who they were. He stepped closer to one arch where a figure stood with her hands clasped behind her back. His first mentor. The one who once told him to focus more on the work than the applause. He had ignored her, of course. He thought she simply underestimated him. Now, her silhouette turned slightly toward him, though her face remained unclear. Elias felt a pang in his chest. What is this place? He whispered. The figure didn't speak. None of them did. Yet something in the air shifted, and the echoes changed shape. They began to whisper, not words, but tones. Moods. Feelings. Confusion, pride, frustration, fear. A swirl of emotions, rising and falling like distant waves. Elias continued down the corridor, and each step awakened another set of silhouettes, another burst of whispers. He saw himself standing on old stages, demanding recognition rather than earning it. He saw moments where he could have listened but instead raised his voice. He saw chances he ruined because he wanted to be the center rather than part of the whole. The Hall of Echoes didn't judge him, it simply showed him the noise he carried. The heavy pressure settled in his chest. The echoes grew louder, overlapping, forming a cloud of sound that made it hard to think. He wanted to turn back, but the path behind him had gone dark, swallowed by shadows that shifted like restless breath. A figure stepped forward from one of the arches. Elias froze. This shadow wasn't blurred like the others. It was clear, sharp, shaped exactly like him, same height, same shoulders, same restless energy. It stood with a boldness that made Elias' stomach tighten. The twin stepped into the path, blocking his way. Elias stared at it. It stared back, the light above flickered, and the echoing whispers hushed, as if the whole corridor held its breath. "You're not real," Elias said, though the words felt weak. The twin's lips curved upward in a half-smile, a familiar smile, one Elias had seen in his own reflection when he believed he deserved more than he received. "You are the voice that told me I was special," Elias whispered. "The one that pushed me to pretend I knew more than I did. The one that made me feel insulted when anyone else succeeded." The shadow tilted its head slightly, as if inviting him to continue. Elias clenched his fists. "What do you want?" The twin raised a finger to its lips, a gesture telling him to be quiet. The silence deepened, heavy and unsettling. Then the shadow stepped closer, its footsteps soundless. Elias tried to back up, but the air behind him thickened like syrup. His body trembled in place. The twin leaned close, its face inches from his. It had no eyes, only dark hollows, but somehow it looked directly into him. A soft whisper rose inside his mind. Not spoken aloud. Felt. "You cannot leave me behind." The realization hit him harder than any blow. This wasn't a monster from outside. It was the version of himself he had carried for as long as he could remember, the loud, hungry voice that demanded acknowledgement, that feared invisibility, that believed humility was weakness. "I know what you are," Elias whispered. The shadow straightened, its expression unreadable. "I came here to silence you." The twin's smile faded. Its posture tightened. Before Elias could react, the shadow dissolved into smoke, slipping through the air like ink spreading through water. The smoke curled behind him, around him, through him, cold, chilling, familiar. The corridor darkened further, and the echoing whispers rose again, louder, sharper, like a chorus arguing inside his skull. His knees weakened. He stumbled, catching himself against one of the archway pillars. The silhouettes within the arches flickered, then faded as if consumed by the twin's presence. Elias gritted his teeth. He pushed forward. The corridor twisted now, no longer a straight path but a winding passage that seemed to shift with every step. The arches bent, their shapes warping like reflections in rippling water. The whispers swirled around him, forming sentences he almost understood. "Why listen? You already know enough. Why wait? You deserve to lead. Why help others? They should notice you." The voices clawed at him, familiar and tempting. He shook his head hard, pressing forward until the floor beneath him sloped downward into a shadowy hollow. The air grew warmer, scented with dust and something old, something that had been waiting for him long before he arrived. The passage opened suddenly into a grand chamber shaped like a circle. Its ceiling rose high above, shrouded in darkness. In the center of the chamber stood a single pedestal carved from smooth, dark stone. Elias approached slowly. A faint glow pulsed from the pedestal's surface, soft, rhythmic, like breathing. He reached out, unsure whether to touch it. The echoes fell silent. A deep voice, not loud, but resonant, rolled through the chamber. It was the same voice that whispered earlier, but now it spoke clearly. "You are nothing without me." Elias froze. The pedestal's glow sharpened, stretching upward to form a new silhouette, one taller, heavier, more imposing than the twin in the corridor. This version carried an authority that pressed against Elias' chest, urging him to be obeyed. It stepped off the pedestal, landing with a thud that shook the chamber floor. Elias stumbled back, the figure's outline sharpened until it stood like a king made of shadow, crowned by smoldering smoke, towering over him with a certainty that burned. It pointed at him. "You cannot walk this path unless you prove that you deserve it." The chamber rumbled. Dust sifted down from the ceiling. Elias braced himself, the giant shadow leaned forward. "Show me your greatness," it whispered, and before Elias could respond, the chamber plunged into darkness, swallowing both him and the monstrous shape whole. Chapter 3: The Giant of Smoke. Darkness wrapped around Elias like a heavy cloak. The air thickened, warm and restless, shifting in waves as if something massive inhaled and exhaled close by. He couldn't see the giant of smoke anymore, but he felt its presence pressing in from every side, its breath rolling through the chamber like distant thunder. He swallowed hard and lifted his hands, expecting to see nothing. But as he moved, faint lines of pale light followed the motion of his fingers, leaving delicate traces behind them. The glow faded quickly, but it was enough to tell him he wasn't completely blind. The chamber reacted to him, responding to each movement, each breath. A low growl echoed through the darkness. Not an animal's growl, something deeper, something that seemed to vibrate inside his chest. Elias stepped backward, but the ground shifted beneath him like thick sand, slowing his retreat. "Show me your greatness," the giant's voice rolled around him, dripping with command. Elias steadied himself. "I don't need to prove anything to you." The darkness quivered, almost amused. "You have always wanted to prove something," the voice replied. "Every boast. Every argument. Every moment you demanded attention. You fed me with every one of them." The air stirred violently, slamming into him from the left. Elias stumbled and hit the ground, his hands scraping across the smooth stone. Another blast of air struck him from the right, faster, sharper. He barely rolled aside before it slammed into the spot where he'd been lying, leaving a swirling crater of dust. He couldn't fight something he couldn't see. He forced himself to breathe slowly. Each exhale left a faint trail of light, drifting upward like fog. He watched the trail stretch, bend, then snap as if pulled by an unseen force. The giant was moving. Elias pushed himself to his feet, closing his eyes. If sight was useless here, then maybe he needed something else. He listened, really listened. The chamber hummed with a faint vibration, like a plucked string still trembling. Beneath that hum, he heard the shifting swirl of smoke and weight. The giant was circling him, steps heavy but muffled by darkness. Elias whispered, "Why do you want me to fight you?" The giant's voice rumbled from behind him, too close. "Because you always have. Every day of your life. You fight to be noticed. To be praised. To be above. You battle the world as if it owes you a throne." The air thickened again, pressing against Elias' back like a giant hand. He spun, raising his arms instinctively. A blast of force collided with his palms, pushing him back several steps. But this time, something strange happened. The pale lines of light around his fingers sparked brighter, forming a thin, shimmering barrier that cracked under the pressure but didn't break. The giant's growl rumbled through the chamber. Elias widened his stance. The barrier flickered, responding to him, not to his pride, but to his focus. "I'm not fighting you," he said, breath shaking. "I'm facing you." The giant's shape flickered into existence for a brief moment, towering, with limbs like billowing smoke and a crown of black mist swirling above its head. Its eyes were hollow pits, dripping with silver light that seemed too heavy to fall. "Facing me is fighting me," the giant growled. It swept its arm toward him, the smoke stretching into a sharp blade of shadow. Elias leaped aside, but the blade grazed his shoulder, leaving a cold sting that sank beneath his skin. He gasped, clutching the wound. The giant's voice softened, almost coaxing. "You are weak without me. Without your hunger, you are nothing." Elias squeezed his eyes shut. He remembered moments where he acted out of desperation to be seen, praised, envied. How empty he had felt afterward. How lonely. The wound on his shoulder pulsed, cold, then warm, then cold again. He whispered, "You're not strength. You're fear pretending to be strength." The chamber trembled. Silence fell, thick and dangerous. The giant roared, a sound so deep that dust rained from the ceiling. It charged toward him, its form shifting into something broader, heavier. Elias braced himself, drawing in a long breath and letting it out slowly. The lines of light around his hands surged to life, forming brighter patterns that twisted along his arms and chest. They wrapped around him like threads of dawn. The giant slammed into him. The force sent him sliding across the floor, but he didn't fall. He pushed forward, feet scraping against the stone, until the smoky mass pressing into him began to break apart, tendrils of shadow peeling away like storm clouds and wind. The giant reformed itself, rising again with a snarl. Elias steadied his breathing. This wasn't a battle of strength. It wasn't about being bigger or louder. The giant grew stronger when he let his pride swell, when he tried to dominate, to overpower, to prove himself. But when he quieted his mind, when he focused instead of flailed, the light grew. He let his arms fall to his sides. The giant hesitated, massive head tilting, its voice lowered. "Do not turn your back on me. You need me." Elias took a slow step forward. "I don't want to be ruled by you anymore." The shadow swirled fiercely, forming a dark windstorm around the giant. It lunged at him again, faster than before. Elias closed his eyes, trusting the faint glow on his skin. When the smoke collided with him, it didn't shove him backward. It didn't cut him. It slid around him, breaking apart as if hitting a still lake. The giant roared, an anguished, furious sound, and thrust both its arms forward. Darkness rushed at Elias like a tidal wave. He lifted his head and whispered, "Enough." The word echoed through the chamber, not in his voice but in one steadier, deeper, anchored from somewhere inside him. The tidal wave stopped. The giant froze. A crack formed through its smoky chest, thin at first, like a hairline fracture in glass, then spreading outward in glowing patterns. The giant reached for him, but its hand dissolved before reaching his face. "If I break," it whispered, voice trembling, "who will you be?" Elias watched the crack spread until the giant's entire form flickered. There was fear in its hollow eyes now, not of Elias, but of disappearing. He lifted a hand toward it. "I'm not destroying you. I'm silencing you." The giant's body shattered into 1,000 streaks of silver smoke, each drifting upward like sparks rising from a dying fire. The chamber brightened, the darkness thinning into a pale haze. The last fragment of the giant hovered before him. It whispered, faint as breath, "Without me, the world will not see you." Elias shook his head gently. "Without you, I can finally see the world." The fragment flickered, then it vanished. Light rushed through the chamber, revealing the stone walls once again, now smooth and unscarred. The pedestal in the center pulsed faintly, its glow softer, calmer. Elias exhaled slowly. The traces of light on his skin faded, but the quiet inside him remained, still, steady. A narrow doorway appeared on the far side of the chamber, carved from pure light. With one last look at the place where the giant had stood, Elias stepped toward the doorway. But just before he reached it, a faint whisper drifted behind him, so soft he wasn't sure if it was real. "I'm not gone. I will follow." He froze. The whisper faded, the doorway brightened, urging him onward. Elias stepped through, heart steady but mind alert, wondering what awaited him next in this strange world where even silence had a voice. Chapter 4: The Garden of Unfinished Paths. Light washed over Elias as he stepped through the doorway, so bright it forced him to shield his eyes. The heavy air of the chamber fell away, replaced by a cool breeze carrying the scent of damp soil and something sweet, something blooming. When the light faded, he found himself standing in a vast garden, only it wasn't a garden in any ordinary sense. It stretched as far as he could see, but instead of tidy rows or familiar flowers, it was filled with twisting paths, each one lined with strange plants that swayed gently even without wind. The paths glowed faintly, like veins carrying quiet energy. Some shimmered brightly, alive with motion. Others were dim, cracked, overgrown as if abandoned long ago. Above the garden hung a sky of soft blue, not quite real, as though painted by a patient hand. Sunlight fell in warm patches, leaving other places shadowed and cool. At the center of the garden rose a tall, crooked tree with silver leaves that flickered like coins catching light. Its roots curled along the ground, disappearing beneath the many paths branching from it. Elias took a tentative step forward. As his foot touched the nearest path, it brightened briefly, reacting to him. But the glow faded quickly, returning to a dull shimmer. A woman's voice drifted toward him. "You're not the first to enter the Garden of Unfinished Paths," she said. "And you won't be the last." Elias turned. A figure approached along a winding trail, a woman wrapped in layers of deep blue cloth that shimmered like rippling water. Her hair was tied in a long braid that trailed behind her, and her skin carried a soft glow that made her seem both present and not. She smiled as she reached him, kindly, but with eyes that had seen many wanderers like him. "Who are you?" Elias asked. "Someone who once stood where you stand," she replied. "Someone who thought the world owed me something simply because I dreamed brightly." Elias's gaze wandered over the vast tangle of paths. "What is this place?" "The garden remembers every dream you ever claimed," she said. "Every idea you announced proudly but never nurtured. Every promise you made to yourself, only to abandon when the work grew quiet or slow or invisible." Elias frowned. "These paths, they're mine?" "Some are," she said. "Some belong to others who walked here before. But the ones that respond to your touch, those are yours." He stepped carefully onto another glowing trail. The moment his foot touched it, shapes began forming along the pathway, faint outlines of scenes from long ago. He saw himself younger, standing in a workshop, declaring he'd build something remarkable. But the image flickered and crumbled like dust. He walked to another path. This one showed him sitting at a desk, mapping out plans, speaking with such certainty that he'd become a great scholar. That image too faded, dimming until only shadows remained. Elias's chest tightened. "These are failures." The woman shook her head gently. "Not failures. Just beginnings you walked away from." He swallowed hard. She stepped beside him, gesturing toward a path lined with delicate blue flowers. "Walk this one." He hesitated. "What will I see?" "The truth." Elias followed the path. As he walked, the garden around him shifted. Plants bent to reveal scenes, tiny at first, then bursting into full shape like memories made real. He watched a version of himself rehearsing speeches about grand plans, speaking loudly of what he would accomplish. But he never worked quietly, never studied in the dark when no one watched. He had loved the idea of becoming someone great more than the work required to reach that point. The illusion faded, replaced by another scene, him arguing with a mentor, insisting he already knew enough. He had walked away from that path too, certain he'd find a better one, yet he never did. Elias gritted his teeth. "Why are you showing me this?" The woman's voice floated toward him. "Because the enemy inside you whispers that you are owed progress simply because you desire it. This garden shows what happens when desire is louder than discipline." He wanted to protest, to defend himself, but the images kept coming. He saw himself turning down tasks because he felt they were beneath him. He saw himself refusing to ask questions because he didn't want to appear inexperienced. He saw promise after promise he had made, to himself, to others, fade into nothing as he moved on to the next idea, and the next, and the next. The path beneath him dimmed. Elias sank to a knee. "I didn't realize how much I'd abandoned." "You thought the world would wait for you," the woman said softly. "But the world moves on. Paths fade. Dreams wither when left alone." He looked up at her, his voice barely a whisper. "Is there a way to fix this?" She offered him her hand. "Stand." He took it, pulling himself up. Then she pointed to the great silver tree at the center of the garden. "Every path leads back to that tree. And from that tree, new paths grow, ones that require quiet effort, not loud promises." Elias gazed at the tree. Its leaves shimmered in a soft breeze, each one reflecting a tiny, shifting image. As he stepped closer, he saw versions of himself in those reflections, some focused and determined, others distracted, others proud. The woman followed him. "This tree holds every future you can still choose. But be warned, the garden only opens the path you are truly ready to walk, not the one you brag about walking." Elias reached the roots of the silver tree. A single branch lowered toward him, leaves trembling. A pathway unfurled at his feet, fresh, narrow, glowing brighter than any he had stepped on before. It stretched forward, weaving through the garden like a thread of light. He felt something stir inside him, hope. But before he could step onto the new path, the garden darkened slightly, as if a cloud had passed overhead. The roots beneath his feet shifted, curling like sleeping serpents. The woman tensed. "Be careful." Elias turned. "What now?" She stepped back, fear flickering across her normally calm face. You must choose the path with humility. If arrogance touches your choice, the garden changes. The ground trembled, a low rumble echoed through the air, rolling beneath the roots of the silver tree. Elias stared at the glowing path. It looked so inviting, so perfect, so promising. A part of him, small but sharp, thought, this path is for someone destined to be great. The moment the thought brushed his mind, the path flickered, the garden shuddered again. The woman shouted, "Careful! The tree reacts to your intention." Elias forced himself to breathe deeply, letting the thought drain away. The trembling slowed, the path steadied. He stepped closer, but didn't step onto it. Not yet. He looked at the woman. How will I know if I'm choosing for the right reason? She smiled sadly. You won't. You'll only know if the garden lets you pass. Elias turned toward the glowing path again. He lifted one foot, the ground shifted beneath him. A second path suddenly burst into view beside the first, dark, twisted, pulsing with a hungry red glow. It curved through thick shadows where the plants writhed like restless serpents. The woman gasped. No, not that one. Elias stared. What is it? A shortcut, she whispered. The kind you take when you want glory without growth. Many wanderers chose that path. The dark path pulsed again, almost calling to him. The silver tree rustled anxiously. Elias stood between the glowing path and the dark one, both stretching ahead into futures he couldn't see. The bright path offered discipline and quiet work. The dark one offered speed and recognition. His heart pounded. He took a step back, unsure which direction his foot would go. Both paths flickered and the garden waited, breathless, as Elias hovered at the crossroads, one wrong intention away from stepping into a place he might never return from. Chapter 5: The Whispering Shortcut. Elias stood frozen between the two paths, one glowing softly like a steady sunrise, the other pulsing with a darker light that seemed to tug at his mind with invisible fingers. The air thickened around him, and the plants lining the dark path rustled as though whispering secrets they weren't meant to share. The blue-clad woman watched him carefully, her eyes full of warning. Do not listen to that path, she said, her voice tight. It promises everything quickly, but it takes far more than it gives. Elias swallowed hard. The bright path stretched ahead like a calm promise. The dark path curved like a beckoning serpent. The contrast pulled at him, stirring things inside he thought he had quieted. As he stared at the dark path, it shifted slightly, widening, opening, as if recognizing his attention. Shadows curled gently along its edges, forming patterns that resembled steps forward. Steps that felt easy. Steps that didn't demand patience or discipline. A whisper brushed his ear. Why struggle? You could be known now. The voice was soft. Familiar, the same echo he had heard all his life when he wanted to leap ahead of the work, ahead of others, ahead of everything. He closed his eyes, pressing his palms against his temples. It's just another trick. It is more than a trick, the woman said, stepping closer. The shortcut leads to a hall of mirrors, where wanderers become trapped in reflections of their desires. They chase their own image until they forget who they truly are. Elias opened his eyes. What happens if someone walks it? She hesitated. Some come back changed. Some come back shadows. Some never come back at all. The dark path pulsed again, stronger, as though offended by her words. Elias took a shaky step away from it, and then the whisper returned, not from ahead of him, but from inside him. You deserve the easier road. You've worked enough. You've fought enough. Why not take what should already be yours? The whisper inside sounded almost comforting, urging him to choose the path that felt good immediately, not the one that required humility and persistence. The temptation swelled like a tide, tugging him toward the shadows. His breathing quickened, memories flickered behind his eyes, times he had reached for shortcuts in the past. Times he had chosen appearance over substance, praise over practice. Times he had spoken grandly of future success but avoided the quiet hours needed to earn it. He stepped forward toward the dark path. The woman gasped. Elias, stop. But the path brightened hungrily, the shadows stretching like eager hands. He didn't touch it yet. He stood at its very edge, toes a breath away from the glowing red surface. The air around it vibrated softly, like a distant heartbeat syncing with his own. He exhaled slowly. Why is it so tempting? Because it tells you everything you want to hear, she said. It feeds the part of you that fears being ordinary. The part that wants to be admired more than it wants to grow. He considered her words, the dark light reflecting in his eyes. Slowly, he turned back to her. Tell me what the bright path demands. Patience, she said. Silence. Humility. Work done without applause. Progress too small for others to notice. Days when nothing seems to move. Moments when you doubt everything but keep going anyway. He let out a bitter laugh. No wonder so many choose the shortcut. No wonder so many get lost in it, she replied gently. Elias shifted his gaze to the bright path. It glowed steadily, softly, without promising anything except movement. No whispers. No temptations. No illusions of quick transformation. Just a path, open, honest, real. He took a step toward it. The dark path hissed. A long, low sigh of shadows rolled across the ground, curling around his ankles like a warning. The plants beside it writhed, their leaves stretching toward him as though begging him not to leave. The bright path remained still, quiet, waiting. Elias whispered to himself, why does the right choice feel so difficult? The woman smiled with sad understanding. Because mastery begins where desire ends. He stood between the paths once more, heart pounding. This time, he listened, not to the whispers. To the silence. To the quiet inside him, the one the giant of smoke had tried to drown. That quiet grew into a steady feeling in his chest, soft but firm. He turned fully toward the bright path, and stepped onto it. The moment his foot touched its surface, the path glowed brighter, spreading light ahead of him in a long, warm ribbon. The plants lining it straightened and shimmered like they had been waiting for him. Behind him, the dark path shrieked. The sound tore through the garden like a gale, shaking branches, rattling roots, scattering petals. Shadows lifted from its surface like smoke rising from a dying fire. The woman covered her ears, grimacing. Elias forced himself not to look back. I've made my choice, he whispered. The dark path gave one final violent pulse, then collapsed inward, folding itself into darkness until nothing remained but a faint scorch mark on the soil. Silence washed over the garden, heavy with relief. The woman exhaled slowly. You chose well. Elias nodded, though his legs trembled. The bright path continued ahead, glowing a little stronger now, as though welcoming him. He took another step, then another. The silver-leafed tree behind him swayed gently, as if blessing his direction. The woman remained at the base of the tree, watching him go with calm eyes. He walked until her figure blurred behind shimmering leaves and roots. The path began to slope upward, weaving through tall plants that leaned and whispering encouragements, subtle, quiet, free of flattery. It felt different from any journey he had taken before. And then, just as he reached a small crest in the path, the ground dipped suddenly, revealing a new landscape beyond. A valley wide, silent, covered in thick mist that moved like breathing. At its center rose a towering archway made of dark stone, cracked and ancient, with symbols carved so deeply they looked like scars. A chill ran through Elias's spine. The archway pulsed faintly, like a heart beating under stone. He stepped closer, curiosity and unease twisting together. The wind shifted, and a familiar whisper curled out from the mist, sliding coldly into his ear. A choice made once must be made again and again. Elias froze. The mist beneath the archway stirred, and from its depths, something moved, something shaped like a person, but too still, too silent, too familiar. It took one step forward. Elias felt his breath catch. Whatever it was, it knew him and it was waiting. The journey took Elias and Mira far beyond the borders of the Whispering Plains and deep into a land where sunlight seemed thicker, almost golden, as if the air itself held memories of old triumphs. They walked through tall grass that swayed like a slow, thoughtful crowd, and every few steps they passed strange stone markers carved with names neither of them recognized. Mira brushed her hand across one and shivered. These stones, she whispered, they feel like they're watching us. Elias nodded. He felt it too, a heavy presence, the sense that this place remembered things that happened long before they arrived. He followed a narrow path that cut through the grass, leading toward a structure in the distance. At first it looked like a shimmering mountain, but as they drew closer the shape sharpened into something unbelievable. It was a hall, enormous, towering, built from smooth, silvered stone. But the stone did not reflect the world outside. Instead, it shimmered with images of people. Some walked boldly. Some stood atop broken boulders with chests puffed out. Others stared into the distance with unreadable expressions. Elias slowed his steps. "Who are they?" he whispered. Mira tilted her head. "Heroes, maybe?" They approached the entrance, a tall archway framed by two pillars that hummed softly, as though speaking in a language neither of them understood. When Elias stepped under the arch, the humming stopped, and the air grew still. Inside, the hall stretched endlessly in both directions, glowing faintly like the inside of a pearl. Mirrors lined the walls, tall, narrow, and shaped like doorways. Elias approached the nearest one. His reflection formed slowly, but he barely recognized himself. In the mirror, he stood tall, draped in fine clothes, with people reaching toward him as though he were some kind of legend. "That's not me," he murmured. Mira stepped beside him and frowned. "It's a version of you. The version this place wants to show." A voice echoed from behind them. "Not the version the hall shows. The version you wish others would see." They spun around. An old man stood near the far wall. His robe was simple, but it shimmered with shifting colors, as though every shade of pride and ambition moved through it. Deep lines creased his face, but his eyes glowed with kindness and something older, something patient. "Welcome," he said, bowing. "I am the keeper of mirrored heroes." Elias felt a strange pressure building in his chest, the shame of wanting too much and the fear of not being enough. The keeper noticed and offered a gentle smile. "This hall is not here to condemn you," he said. "It is here to show you what lies quietly inside the hearts of all who enter." Mira stepped forward cautiously. "And what is that?" The keeper gestured toward the mirrors. "The longing to be special. To be remembered. To be admired." Elias swallowed. "Is that wrong?" "Not wrong," the keeper replied softly. "But dangerous, if it becomes louder than the work you must do. Many wander here and become lost in their reflections, trapped by dreams of their own importance." He led them deeper into the hall. With each step, the mirrors changed. Some showed people giving passionate speeches to crowds. Some showed warriors holding gleaming weapons while others knelt before them. Others showed scholars praised by students, inventors celebrated by cities, explorers worshipped by entire nations. Every mirror sparkled with admiration, applause, approval. The deeper they walked, the heavier the air became, as if pride itself had weight. Elias struggled to breathe evenly. Mira placed a hand on his arm. "You feel it too," she whispered. "I do," he said. "It's like the air wants us to stand taller, speak louder, claim something we haven't earned." The keeper stopped before a massive mirror framed in gold so bright it hurt to look at. "This is the final mirror of the hall," he said. "It shows not the hero you think you could become, but the hero you fear you might pretend to be." Elias's throat tightened as an image formed. In the mirror, he stood on a balcony high above a cheering city, basking in praise. But something was wrong. His eyes were hollow. His smile was strained. Behind him, doors were closed, hiding the truth. He hadn't achieved the things people shouted about. He hadn't fought the battles they believed he had won. He had simply learned how to look victorious. He stepped back, trembling. "I don't want this." The keeper placed a hand on his shoulder. "Many say that. But the mirror shows what happens when applause becomes more important than action." Mira stared at her own reflection in another glass panel. She saw herself surrounded by followers who treated her every word as sacred. She stepped away quickly, her face pale. "Why show us this?" she asked. "Because the greatest danger," the keeper said quietly, "is not failure. It is the illusion of greatness. When people believe they are already heroes, they stop learning. They stop listening. They stop moving forward." Elias felt a stirring inside him, a difficult feeling, raw and uncomfortable. He realized he had often imagined himself being praised, even for things he hadn't done yet. The thought embarrassed him. But the keeper noticed and nodded approvingly. "The hall has done its work," he said. "Awareness is the first step. But there is one more thing you must do before you leave." He raised his hand, and the mirrors began to shimmer. The reflections blurred, twisted, and shifted until each one showed a dark, foggy path stretching endlessly ahead. These mirrors are no longer showing what you wish to be, the keeper said. They are showing what you must walk through. The journey without applause. The work no one celebrates. The effort no one sees. Elias approached one mirror and touched its surface. It rippled like water. What happens if I step inside? He asked. You won't, the keeper replied gently. Not yet. These paths appear only to remind you that real strength is built in silence, far from admiration. When you crave praise, you must remember these paths, the ones where only the work matters. The mirrors dimmed again until they showed only their own cold glass. Mira exhaled softly. I think I understand. But Elias wasn't sure he did. Not completely. A part of him still felt the pull of the earlier images, the version of himself standing tall, admired, applauded. That hunger hadn't disappeared. It lingered like a shadow behind his thoughts. The keeper saw the conflict on his face. Do not try to kill the hunger, he said. You must learn to master it. Keep it quiet. Keep it small. Keep it behind you, where it can't lead you. Elias nodded slowly. I'll try. That is enough, the keeper said. For now. He led them toward the exit, and as they stepped out of the hall, the sunlight felt strangely sharp. The grass outside whispered again, but this time it sounded like a warning carried by the wind. As they walked away, Elias turned back for one last look. The hall shimmered like a silver mountain, silent and unmoving. But he couldn't shake the feeling that inside, his reflection was still watching him, waiting, tempting, calling, and he wondered, with a quiet dread, what other illusions still waited for them on the road ahead. Elias and Mira left the valley of mirrored heroes behind them, but its weight followed like a second shadow. The air shifted as they walked, growing cooler, sharper, as though the land itself wanted to strip away whatever pride still clung to them. The path narrowed into a winding trail carved between tall cliffs. Their surfaces were rough and dark, and every now and then a loose stone broke away and rattled down the slopes like a warning. Mira brushed dust from her sleeves. Where do you think we're going now? Elias lifted his gaze toward the narrow slip of sky visible above. Somewhere quieter, I hope. But as they rounded a tight corner, they found anything but quiet. A roaring sound thundered from deep inside the cliffs, echoing through the stone like the growl of a buried storm. Elias and Mira exchanged a glance, and without speaking they followed the sound. It led them to a cavern entrance shaped like a jagged mouth ready to swallow anyone foolish enough to step inside. The moment they crossed the threshold, heat rushed over them, not the scorching blast of fire but a dry, steady warmth, like the breath of an old creature lying in its sleep. The cavern opened into a massive space filled with strange structures. They looked like forges, with thick anvils and tall chimneys, but none of them burned. Not a single flame flickered. Instead, the air hummed with a faint vibration, like metal cooling after being struck. Elias frowned. Where's the fire? How do they forge anything without it? That is the question most ask, a deep voice replied. A towering figure stepped from the shadows. His skin was the gray of cooling iron, his eyes bright as molten metal. His beard hung heavy like braided chains, and his massive hands were scarred with marks that looked older than stories. He carried no hammer, yet the air around him crackled as if shaped by invisible blows. I am Brannock, he said, his voice echoing across the chamber. Keeper of the forge with no flame. Mira bowed her head respectfully. We didn't mean to intrude. No one intrudes here, Brannock said. Those who arrive are sent by the weight they carry, even if they do not yet know its name. Elias swallowed. What weight do you mean? Brannock gestured for them to follow. He led them between the silent forges. Each anvil had markings carved into its surface, symbols of failure, symbols of attempts, symbols of long roads walked with no guarantee of success. This, Brannock said, is the forge where people come to build discipline. To learn the strength that does not shine. The kind that grows quietly, one strike at a time. But there's no fire, Elias repeated. Brannock's lips curved into a faint smile. Exactly. The flame is the easiest part. The noise, the sparks, the heat, those give a sense of movement, of progress. But true work does not always glow. It is slow, steady, often invisible. He picked up a long bar of metal. It looked cold, lifeless. Yet when Brannock held it, the metal seemed to hum with a low, restless energy. Watch. He placed the metal on an anvil and brought down his bare fist. A deep sound rang through the cavern, not loud, but powerful, a vibration that seemed to shake something inside Elias more than in the air around him. Brannock struck again, and with each impact the metal changed shape slowly, almost reluctantly. No sparks flew. No orange glow spread through it. But the bar curved, softened, reshaped itself under Brannock's patient control. Myra's eyes widened. It's beautiful. In a quiet way. Brannock nodded. Many seek the fire because it makes them feel alive. It gives them a story to tell. But the greatest strength is forged when no one is watching, when the work is dull and heavy, when progress can only be felt after many long days. He lifted the shaped metal and handed it to Elias. It was warm, but not burning. Solid, but still unfinished. Take it, Brannock said. Feel the weight. Elias held it carefully. It seemed heavier than it should have been, as though the metal remembered every strike, every moment of shaping. What is this for? He asked. It is a symbol, Brannock said. Of what you must carry next. You wish to grow, to become strong in ways that matter, but strength without discipline is a blade without an edge. Elias looked down at the metal. Somewhere deep inside, he knew Brannock was right. He thought of all the times he had abandoned tasks halfway, all the times he had rushed for results, hoping for quick victories instead of slow effort. Mira gently touched the bar. How do we learn this discipline? Brannock led them deeper into the cavern, where the humming was stronger. They reached an enormous stone table covered in tools, brushes, chisels, scraps of metal, pieces of broken weapons. Each person must learn differently, Brannock said. But there is one truth that never changes: discipline is built through humility. Through accepting that growth takes time. That your work must often go unnoticed. That you must keep going even when you doubt the path. Elias closed his eyes. Doubt had been following him since the first steps of their journey. The thought of continuing without applause or certainty scared him. Brannock placed a hand on his shoulder. It felt like resting under a mountain. You want greatness. That is clear. But understand, greatness is not something you hunt. It is something you grow into, day by day, moment by moment, through the silent shaping of your own mind. He turned to Mira. And you, wanderer of quick thoughts, you must learn to slow yourself. To choose depth over speed. To let go of the need for constant movement. Mira nodded slowly, absorbing his words with more seriousness than usual. Brannock stepped back, crossing his huge arms. Before you leave this forge, you must each shape something. Not with flame. Not with glory. But with patience. He placed 2 blocks of raw metal before them. They looked dull, misshapen, unremarkable. Elias hesitated. What do we shape? Something that reflects the person you are trying to become, Brannock said. Not the one you wish the world would see. They each picked up a hammer, heavy, quiet, balanced, and stood before their pieces. The first strike felt wrong. The metal barely moved. The second was no better. The third felt pointless. But little by little, the rhythm settled into their bodies. Slow. Steady. Without spark or shine. Yet the work started to change the metal in ways they could feel before they could see. Time passed in silence, real silence, the kind that deepens rather than empties. Finally, Brannock lifted his hands. Enough. Elias looked down at what he had shaped. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't impressive. But it was honest. Solid. A beginning. Myra's piece was similar, simple, sturdy, unglamorous. Brannock nodded proudly. Now you understand the nature of discipline. Elias felt something shift inside him, not a burst of pride, but a quiet steadiness. As they prepared to leave, Brannock stopped them with a raised hand. There is one more lesson, he rumbled. Discipline must be protected. Pride seeks to weaken it. Comfort seeks to soften it. Doubt seeks to break it. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a deep whisper, and ahead of you lies a place where all three wait in the shadows. Elias's stomach tightened. Mira glanced toward the cavern exit where the path vanished into darkness. What place? Elias asked. Brannock's molten eyes flickered. The Garden of Quiet Temptations, he said. If you are not careful, it will unmake everything you have built. And before Elias could ask another question, the cavern lights dimmed, the humming sank into silence, and a cold wind blew across the floor, as though warning them that the greatest challenges were the ones that whispered, not roared. The path beyond the forge led Elias and Mira into a deep, twisting gorge where the sound of their footsteps echoed so softly it seemed the rocks were swallowing every noise before it could grow. For a long time they walked without speaking, each carrying the weight of Brannock's warning. Above them, the sky narrowed into a thin gray ribbon, and the air felt heavy with something unsaid. Eventually the walls of the gorge opened into a clearing unlike anything they had seen before. Mist curled around their ankles like gentle fingers beckoning them forward. Tall trees formed a living arch above the path, their branches woven together so tightly that only faint light filtered through in shimmering threads. Strange perfume hung in the air, sweet, calming, almost comforting. Mira inhaled deeply. It smells peaceful. Elias nodded, but he felt a chill run along his spine. Peaceful places rarely came without a price. The path brought them to a garden surrounded by soft humming, as if invisible voices whispered between the leaves. Flowers with shimmering petals grew in perfect patterns. Small ponds reflected the sky like mirrors, their surfaces so still they seemed to sleep. Birds perched on branches, silent but watchful, their feathered heads turning slowly toward the travelers. At the center of the garden stood a figure in flowing robes the color of morning mist. Their hair fell in calm waves, and their eyes were soft but deep, so deep Elias felt himself falling into them for a moment before he blinked. Welcome, the figure said. I am Lyrian, caretaker of this sanctuary. Mira stepped forward, enchanted by the tranquility. This is the most peaceful place we've seen on our journey. Lyrian smiled, and the expression felt like a warm blanket. Peace is good, they said. But too much peace can become a chain. Elias felt the words prick at his skin. What do you mean? Lyrian motioned for them to walk. As they moved through the garden, Lyrian began to speak in a voice that felt like a lullaby. This garden is meant to test travelers who have begun their climb toward growth. Not through danger or fear. Those are loud challenges, easy to see. But the most dangerous challenges are the quiet ones, the ones that whisper to you, that offer comfort instead of purpose. They stopped before a pond. Its surface shimmered like polished glass. Lyrian nodded toward it. Look. Elias leaned over the water. Instead of his reflection, he saw a vision of himself resting on a soft, cushioned seat beneath a sunny window. Books lay open at his side. A warm cup sat in his hand. No struggles waited. No challenges called. Just endless, drifting comfort. Mira gasped. Mine, show something different. Her pond displayed a cozy cottage with a glowing hearth. She sat near it, wrapped in a blanket, surrounded by people praising her for the smallest tasks, encouraging her to never push too hard, to enjoy the easy life she already had. Lyrian watched them quietly. Tempting, is it not? Elias tore his gaze away, heart thudding. Too tempting. This garden, Lyrian said, shows you the life that allows you to stop. To rest forever in small pleasures. It offers stillness, ease, comfort. But comfort, when chosen too soon, becomes a gentle prison. The words sank deep, like stones dropped into a pond. Lyrian continued walking, leading them past clusters of luminous flowers that pulsed faintly like slow heartbeats. Many travelers never leave this garden, they said. Not because they cannot find the path out, but because they no longer wish to. They choose the warmth of small victories. They choose the ease of staying exactly as they are. They paused beside a tall, elegant flower. Its petals glowed a soft silver, and the scent drifting from it was soothing. Lyrian plucked one petal and held it out. Smell this. It will calm every fear you have. Elias hesitated. Why would you offer us something that could stop us from continuing? Because the garden reveals, Lyrian said gently. It does not deceive. It offers you the choice you already carry within yourselves. Mira stepped closer. What choice? Lyrian smiled sadly. The choice between comfort and growth. The petal in their hand drifted slightly, inviting Elias to take it. He reached forward almost unconsciously, but Mira grabbed his arm. Wait. He blinked as if waking from a dream. Lyrian's voice remained soothing, but now Elias noticed a faint sorrow hiding beneath it. There is no shame in rest. The world often pushes people too hard, too fast. But there is also danger in refusing the call that pulls you toward your full strength. They continued through the garden. The trees began to glow faintly, as though holding the last light of day. A soft path lined with smooth stones led toward a quiet grove. Elias whispered, "Why is this harder than any danger we faced before?" Because temptation doesn't confront you, Lyrian said softly. It comforts you. It tells you you've done enough, even when you haven't. It tells you to take pride in small wins and never push further. Pride wants applause. Fear wants safety. But temptation wants you to stay still. They reached the grove's center. At its heart stood a circle of stone seats arranged around a low pedestal. On the pedestal sat a shimmering fruit, glowing as if lit from within. It was beautiful. Perfect. And instead of the scent of sweetness, it held a fragrance that smelled like contentment itself. What is this? Mira whispered, the fruit of enough, Lyrian replied. One bite fills you with the belief that you've already reached the summit of your journey. It silences every doubt, every drive, every desire to grow. Elias felt dizzy. His heart whispered, just one bite. You've done so much already. You deserve rest, but another voice struggled inside him, one that remembered the forge, the mirrored hall, the library of forgotten truths. I don't want this, he breathed, yet a part of him did. Lyrian watched them carefully. This is your test. Not of strength. Not of intelligence. But of desire. Mira stepped back, shaking her head as though clearing it of fog. If we eat this, we won't continue, will we? You will not wish to, Lyrian said simply. Silence stretched. Finally Elias spoke, voice trembling. How do we leave? Lyrian pointed toward a narrow path obscured by tall silver grass. Walk that way, and do not look back. The garden will try to call you. It may show you visions. It may whisper your name. But you must keep moving. Mira grabbed Elias's hand. We can do this. He nodded, though fear fluttered inside him like trapped wings. They stepped toward the path. At once, the air shifted, the humming grew louder. The mist thickened. The grass rustled with voices. Rest, stop. You've done enough. Stay. Why struggle? Why climb? Why change? Elias squeezed his eyes shut, but visions formed in the mist anyway. A peaceful home, effortless praise, endless calm. Mira stumbled. Elias, don't stop, don't listen. He pulled her forward. The voices grew sharper. Stay with us. You've earned this. No more pain. No more risk. Just sweetness. Elias felt his steps slowing. Mira yanked on his arm. Keep going. He forced his legs to move. The path narrowed. The silver grass brushed their shoulders. The air thickened like syrup. Elias felt a warm breeze stroke his cheek, carrying a whisper shaped exactly like his mother's voice. You've done enough, my son. His heart cracked open. He almost turned, but Myra's hand tightened painfully around his. Don't, she whispered. Don't you dare. And together, step by heavy step, they pushed through the final curtain of mist. The moment they crossed the threshold, the whispers disappeared. The air cleared. The mist evaporated. They stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking a vast new horizon. Behind them, the garden shimmered quietly, beautiful, welcoming, and unbearably dangerous. Elias exhaled shakily. That was harder than any mirror or forge. Mira nodded, eyes still wide. What lies ahead must be even harder. Elias stared at the distant landscape, a place of shadows and flickering lights, and he felt it, the faint pull of something immense waiting for them, something that would change everything. At the cliff's edge, the world stretched before Elias and Mira in a way that felt both endless and unsettling. The horizon shimmered with shifting colors, as though the sky itself was trying to decide what story to tell next. Valleys dipped into soft gray fog, hills rolled like quiet waves, and in the far distance a single spire rose into the air like a solitary finger pointing upward. A wind brushed past them, gentle but filled with drifting whispers, almost like remnants of voices too tired to speak clearly. "This place feels tired," Mira murmured. Elias nodded. "Like something has been sleeping here for a long time." They descended the slope carefully. The earth beneath their feet was soft, almost powdered, like old ash. The farther they walked, the more muted the world became. Colors faded. Sounds dimmed. Even their thoughts seemed quieter, as if the valley itself was gently pressing a finger to their lips. When they reached the valley floor, Elias heard a faint echo, a strange, hollow reflection of his own footsteps, but slower, more hesitant. "What was that?" he whispered. Mira listened. It sounded like us. A shiver traveled down Elias's spine. They continued forward, each step darker than the last. The valley grew colder, the fog thicker, and shadows stretched unnaturally long even without a clear source of light. Soon they reached a pool, dark, still, so smooth it looked like polished obsidian. Something stirred beneath its surface, and ripples spread outward, slow as melting ice. A figure rose from the water. It wasn't a creature, at least not in the way Elias understood creatures. It was a silhouette made entirely of shifting shadows, shaped vaguely like a person but with no face, no edges, just a moving absence. Yet Elias felt as though it were looking straight at him. "Do not fear," the shadow said, though its voice carried no sound. It entered their minds directly, soft as a passing thought. "I am the Echo Keeper, guardian of this valley." Mira stepped back. "What does this place protect?" The shadow drifted above the water's surface, its form rippling. "This valley holds all the voices silenced by pride, and all the wisdom ignored by those who thought themselves beyond it." Elias swallowed. "Is that why it's so quiet?" "Yes," the Echo Keeper replied. "Every traveler who comes here must face the echoes of the mistakes they carry. Not to be punished, but to learn." The valley darkened, as if responding to the keeper's words. "Come," the shadow said. It glided away from the pool, and Elias and Mira followed across a flat stretch of earth scattered with small stone carvings. Each one was etched with symbols resembling eyes, mouths, or hands, expressions of ideas left unfinished. "What are these?" Elias asked. "Echoes," the keeper answered. "Remnants of lessons ignored. Warnings unheeded. Truths spoken gently and then discarded." Mira bent to pick up one of the stones. The moment her fingers touched it, a whisper filled the air. "You don't need help," the voice murmured. "You're already more capable than the rest." Mira jerked her hand away, startled. Elias picked up another stone. His whisper was different. "You're too important to listen. Others should listen to you." He dropped it immediately, heart racing. "These voices," he said. "They're the lies whispered by ego," the keeper finished. "Soft, flattering, subtle. They live here when you choose not to confront them." The shadows thickened around them, curling like vines of smoke. The keeper stopped before a wide fissure in the earth, a deep crack filled with swirling darkness. "This is where your journey ends," the Echo Keeper said. Not in triumph, but in understanding. Elias stepped closer. "Understanding what?" The keeper's form stretched, thinning like mist and wind. "That your greatest enemy has walked beside you since the beginning." Elias felt a heaviness settle over him. He knew what the keeper meant, yet feared hearing it aloud. "You mean the ego," he whispered. "Yes," the keeper replied. "It feeds on applause, grows on pride, hides behind certainty. It thrives on comfort, and expands with comparison. It has taken many forms during your journey: mirrors, temptations, ghosts of admiration." Mira exhaled shakily. "So what happens now? How do we defeat it?" The keeper drifted closer until its shapeless form hovered inches away. "You do not defeat it," it whispered into their minds. "You learn to master it. And that begins with facing the part of yourself you most fear." The fissure trembled, from its depths rose two new figures, one shaped like Elias, one shaped like Mira. But these figures weren't shadows. They were solid, vibrant, and far too perfect. Elias's reflection wore a confident smirk, eyes burning with ambition. Myra yawned lazily, draped in comfort like a queen of ease. These are the selves you could become, the keeper said. If ego claims you. Elias's double stepped forward, speaking with his voice but sharper, more commanding. Why fear me? I am your best version. Admired. Respected. Powerful. Myra's double laughed softly. And I am your peace. Your reward. A life without struggle. The valley pulsed, and Elias felt their pull. His double was everything he feared wanting. The applause. The admiration. The intoxicating belief of being exceptional. Mira shook her head as her double beckoned her. It's so tempting, she whispered, tears forming. Too tempting. Elias clenched his fists. These versions aren't real. They are possible, the keeper corrected gently. That is why they are dangerous. The figures stepped closer. The air thickened. Elias felt his will slipping, like sand through trembling fingers. His double extended a hand. Take it. Let me lead. Let me speak. You hold yourself back with all this humility. Why pretend to be small when you could be magnificent? Something inside Elias cracked, but then he remembered the quiet forge, the slow work, the steady strikes. He heard Brannock's warning. He recalled Lyrian's garden and the fruit that promised stillness. He saw the mirrored hall showing triumph without substance, and he realized something important. These perfect versions had no weight. No work. No rootstock. He lifted his chin. No, Elias said quietly. You are not growth. You are escape. His double froze. Elias stepped back. I want to be strong, he whispered. But real strength grows slowly. Quietly. Without applause. The double dissolved like smoke caught in sudden sunlight. Mira watched, trembling. Her own double reached for her, eyes soft, promising ease beyond imagination. Myra's voice cracked. I want rest. But not like this. Not at the cost of who I could become. Her double vanished in a shimmer. The valley stilled, the fissure closed, the shadows lifted. The echo keeper drifted before them, smaller now, quieter, as though released from a long duty. You have understood, it whispered. The enemy is not a monster in the world. It is a whisper in your heart. But now you can recognize its voice. Elias felt a gentle calm settle over him, not pride, not triumph, but peace earned through struggle. Mira wiped her eyes and smiled faintly. So this is the end? The keeper shook its shapeless head. No. It is the beginning. Real journeys start only when illusions fall away. It pointed toward the rising spire far in the distance. Go. The world awaits the versions of you who choose humility, discipline, and purpose over pride. Elias and Mira turned toward the horizon. The path ahead was long, winding, and uncertain, but for the first time, they stepped forward with quiet confidence, not because they felt powerful, but because they finally understood the enemy within, and the strength they carried to walk beyond it. And as they left the valley, the echoes slept peacefully behind them, no longer warnings, but reminders of the truth they would carry for the rest of their lives. Thanks for listening to today's audio journey. Which book should we explore next to fuel your momentum? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. I want to know what stories push your mind the most. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a chance to grow with Momentum Mind. Remember, your mindset today shapes your momentum tomorrow.